For 41 and a half days, one of the most famous comedians in America didn't eat a single bite of food. No cameras, no press release, no one outside his immediate family even knew it was happening. He wasn't training for a role. He wasn't chasing some viral diet trend. He was a father, quietly falling apart on the inside, watching his daughter struggle with something he couldn't fix no matter what he tried. And somewhere in that helplessness, he made a decision that had nothing to do with medicine and everything to do with love. That man was Kevin James. And what he did for his daughter is a story he almost never talks about. You know, Kevin James, even if you don't think you do, he's the guy who spent 9 seasons making America laugh as Doug Heffernan on The King of Queens, the lovable food-obsessed husband just trying to keep the peace at home. He's the guy who turned a bumbling Segway, riding security guard, into one of the most quoted movie characters of the 2000 inches, Paul Blart. Mall cop for almost 3 decades, his entire job has been making people feel good. But off-screen, Kevin has always kept a wall up around his personal life. He married actress Stefania Dela Cruz in 2004, and a year later they welcomed their first child, a daughter named Sienna Marie. 3 more kids would follow, and Kevin built a big, full family life almost entirely out of the public eye. Sienna Marie is on the autism spectrum, and like so many parents raising a child with autism, Kevin and Stefania spent years quietly doing the work most people never see, researching, adjusting, trying new things, and showing up for her in 100 small ways nobody was writing articles about. Then came a stretch of time when things got a lot harder, and that's where this story really starts. Sienna Marie began having tics, sudden, involuntary movements that can wear a child down physically and emotionally and wear their parents down right alongside them. At the same time, her sleep completely fell apart. Night after night, she couldn't rest. If you've ever watched your child struggle with something you can't fix, you already know this feeling in your gut. It's not a fever you can bring down. It's not a cut you can bandage. It's something bigger than that, something that just sits there night after night while you lie awake trying to think of anything you haven't already tried. Kevin and Stefania tried plenty, different therapies, different specialists. Different approaches. One after another, they did everything a devoted set of parents could think to do. But nothing was giving their daughter real relief. And as the sleepless nights kept stacking up, so did the exhaustion, hers and theirs. Kevin has said it plainly since. He and his wife simply didn't know what else to do. They'd run out of ideas. They were watching their daughter struggle with something that wouldn't respond to effort or money or good intentions alone. That's the moment everything shifted, not with a miracle, with a father standing at the edge of what he knew how to do and refusing to accept that this was the end of the line. Kevin has spoken more openly in recent years about his Catholic faith and how much it's come to shape his life as he's gotten older. It's not something he wears for show. It's something that clearly runs underneath everything else, including how he responded when he hit that wall with his daughter. With nothing left in his practical toolbox, he turned to something he genuinely never committed to before, fasting. And he'll be the first to tell you it wasn't a natural fit. Kevin has joked openly about how much he loves food, how he's the kind of guy who overeats without a second thought. This wasn't some carefully planned wellness routine he'd been easing into for months. This was a man out of sheer desperation deciding that if there was nothing left he could physically do for his daughter, he could still give something up. He could pray. He could offer his own discomfort as a kind of daily sacrifice on her behalf. He didn't start with a number in mind. There was no dramatic announcement, no vow to hit 40 days. It began much smaller than that. He simply told himself he'd get through one day, just one, water with a small amount of salt to keep his electrolytes steady and nothing else. Then he made it through another day and another. Somehow he kept going. This is where the story gets hard to sit with, because more than 40 days without food isn't some trendy cleanse you skim past in a magazine. It's brutal on the body and on the mind, in ways most people will thankfully never have to find out for themselves. Kevin has been candid about exactly what it felt like. Some days he'd feel oddly steady, almost fine, and then out of nowhere it would hit him, waves of feeling miserable, foggy, completely hollowed out. He's admitted, without any shame, that he thought about quitting more times than he could count. Anyone who's ever pushed through something genuinely hard knows that exact feeling, the moment when stopping suddenly sounds not just tempting but reasonable. What kept him upright wasn't stubbornness, it was his daughter. Every time he thought about calling it off, his mind went straight back to why he'd started in the first place. This wasn't about him. It was about laying something down day after day in the hope that it might somehow reach her. There is one moment Kevin keeps coming back to whenever he tells this story because it's the moment that changed everything. He was deep into the fast worn thin, right at the point where he was seriously ready to stop for good. And that day, Sienna Marie asked him something. She wanted to know if he was still fasting for her. Then she told him she'd finally had a really good night's sleep. He's described that moment as stopping him cold out of everything he could have heard that day. That was the one thing that made him decide without a second thought to keep going. In the end, he fasted for more than 40 days. 41 and a half to be exact, even though he said he never set out chasing a specific number at all. Just water, just salt, just prayer, and a love for his daughter strong enough to carry him through days he genuinely didn't think he'd survive. Here's something Kevin has always been careful to say, and it matters just as much as everything else in this story. He doesn't tell it as proof of some instant magical cure. He's never claimed to be a doctor, and he's never framed it that way. Autism doesn't simply disappear, and Sienna Marie's progress involved plenty of other support too: therapy, professional guidance, and the steady, unglamorous work of two parents who never stopped showing up for her long before that fast and long after it. What Kevin does say is that during that stretch and in the time that followed, something started to shift. Her sleep began to improve. There were mornings that felt noticeably different, calmer, quieter, easier on the whole family. For a father who'd spent so long feeling powerless, that shift meant more than almost anything else in his life. He said that hearing his daughter notice what he was doing and tell him she was finally sleeping better felt like a kind of confirmation, not scientific proof. Something quieter than that, a sign that his prayers and everything he'd given up to make them hadn't gone unheard. He first opened up about this publicly on Joe Rogan's podcast, which caught a lot of people off guard, hearing something this raw and spiritual from a guy best known for making people laugh. Later, he went even deeper into it on the Catholic podcast Catholics and Cappuccinos, talking at length about the faith underneath the fast and what the whole experience taught him about surrender, patience, and trusting something bigger than himself. So why does a story like this stay with people? Even if you've never fasted a day in your life, even if autism has never touched your family, even if you're not religious at all. Because underneath everything, this was never really a story about fasting. It's a story about what it costs to love someone all the way through. Every parent watching this knows what it's like to lie awake at night wishing they could fix something for their child that's simply out of reach. You can't outwork it, you can't out-Google it, you can't buy your way past it. Sometimes the only thing left is your willingness to give up a piece of yourself and say, without needing anyone to notice, I'm doing this for you. Kevin James wasn't chasing headlines when he made that decision. He wasn't thinking about how it would sound in an interview years later. He did it quietly out of desperation and love, the same way countless parents watching this right now have found their own private ways to show up for their kids when nothing else was working. His story just happened to eventually become public. What sticks with you isn't really the number of days. It's the fact that on day 20, on day 30, on the mornings he wanted to quit the most, he thought of his daughter's face and kept going anyway. That's what real love looks like once the cameras are off and nobody's watching. It's not glamorous. Most of the time, it's just showing up again and then again, even when you're running on nothing. If this story landed somewhere in you, take a moment and think about the people in your own life quietly doing their own version of this. Some sacrifice nobody claps for. Some act of love that will never make a headline. Maybe today's the day you let them know you see it and that they're not carrying it alone. Share this with someone who could use a little hope right now. And if stories like this mean something to you, go ahead and hit like and subscribe so we can keep bringing you the real human stories behind the people we think we already know. Because sometimes the strongest thing a father can do isn't loud and it isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's simply refusing to give up on the person he loves.